First of all, I am married and live in Belmont. I have three daughters. I have one who's a freshman in college, one who's a freshman in high school, and then I have a seventh grade daughter as well. I grew up in Rockport on the North Shore of Boston, went to the University of New Hampshire, went to Boston College, and got a job back at my old middle school in Rockport. So I was there for a year, but unfortunately in the early 90s, with budget problems, a lot of times you got pink slips if you were a non-tenured teacher. So I got a pink slip at the end of the year. My position would be saved, but I went out and interviewed and got a job in Concord. And I was at the Concord Middle School for 5 years, learning how to become an educator. Loved my time in Concord. I was coaching at the high school, and I was a sixth grade social studies teacher. And I thought one of the really, really nice things was I would get to meet kids as they were leaving the elementary school. I'd get to have relationships with them, and then I would see them in high school as they were getting ready to graduate and go to college. And I just thought that was wonderful. And I think I would have been in Concord probably for the next 30 years, except for my wife came home one day and she said I was given the opportunity to go to London and run an office, and it's free housing and we'll have a great time. And so I thought that was wonderful. In fact, I see someone who used to work with my wife, so she can vouch for that story in London. So we were there for 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, I came back and I got a job at the Wellesley Middle School. It's probably where I grew up as an educator. I worked for just a wonderful principal by the name of John Doria, who ran an outstanding building. He built trust. It was a place in which people were excited to come to work. It's where the kids were well behaved. They were on the cutting edge, I think, of a lot of educational philosophies and trying things. It wasn't static. It was dynamic and fun. And once again, I thought I was there for the duration. We had our third child at this time, and she was just a little sickly, and we decided to take, or I would take 2 years off. And during that time, John encouraged me to go back and get my administrative degree. I did. I got excited about leadership and the idea of becoming an administrator. I sat next to two people from Norwood at the time, and these two people from Norwood said that there was a great job opportunity there. They said they need a varsity soccer coach. I said, great. They said we have a new position in which we have a dean of students. It was called a housemaster's job, and it allowed you to teach, but do some scheduling, do some discipline, be involved in some leadership decisions. So I went to Norwood, and Norwood was a fun but chaotic place. I came there, and as I entered kind of my career in Norwood, the first thing that I knew was the assistant principal that had been there the year before had actually been arrested from embezzling funds from the teachers union. I was looking for a little bit more stability. A job came up in Dover Sherburne, and I've been there as the assistant principal for 5 years. I enjoy it. I really like the administrative staff that I work with. The kids are great, but I'm getting ready for the next challenge. And so this year I decided about kind of what I wanted to do. It might be because I'm turning 50 that I'm having all these kind of reflective moments. But I said, I'd like to become a building leader. I would like to hopefully put into practice some of the things that I've learned. And I decided what are communities that I would feel at home. And Arlington was on that short list. And the people that I have met from Arlington have an incredible pride for their school system and their town. There's people I meet from Belmont, and they talk about how they enjoyed their childhood, and sometimes their grandparents enjoyed their childhood in Arlington. And I know right now the demographics are changing, and there's a lot more people in the school, so it seems like it would be an exciting place to work at and hopefully, have some change. And when I walked around the building, so I had an all-day walk around the building, it felt like it fit. And so as I walked around and saw teachers doing creative units and having kids grouped well and saw the kids, it just seemed like a fit. And so that's what brings me here tonight. So that's kind of my story. They told me to tell it in kind of an elevator speech. I'm at like the Empire State Building. I know it's probably a long elevator speech, but I would love to take some questions. Yes, sir.
Can you describe how you view and approach both philosophically and practically supervision and evaluation of your professional staff?
Sure. So I think there's been a lot of change in education around evaluation. I think I would say 10 years ago, you might run into a system in which people weren't evaluated, or if they were, I don't think it was actually useful. I remember being evaluated a few times, and it was just kind of a checkoff that you wanted to make sure that you got through as a teacher. I think right now there's much more accountability, and I think when you talk to teachers, I think there's still a lot of bureaucracy that's involved, but I think, at least in the system that I'm in, we really value going to have those discussions with teachers so that it's not a gotcha moment that you're looking for, but you're trying to go into classrooms and trying to evaluate and work with those teachers and hopefully be able to help them see things from an outside perspective that they might not see. And I also think you do that hand in hand with your professional development. So as a staff, you want to work on certain things as a building, and you also want to work individually with those teachers. And so I think as far as the professional staff, you have to go in and build trust. And I think that would probably be my first priority, is coming into a new school system, is to be able to build trust and hopefully move teachers forward. Yes?
Could you describe your philosophy on discipline in middle school?
Sure. So when I was in Norwood, I would say I was like one of the chief discipline people in the building. And what you want to do is you want to use, hopefully, consequences to have kids learn. And so the whole overarching idea for me for discipline is that you want kids to make better decisions. And you want to make sure that you're clear with them, that you have trust, but there are some times that they're going to make poor decisions, and you want them not to repeat the mistakes and make those same decisions. And I do feel with certain kids, it's a little bit of a moving target. There are certain kids that are going to need a little bit more of a strict approach. There's going to be some kids who are going to have to be talked with the guidance counselors, and you're going to have to make sure to the best of their ability that whatever they need to understand what they did was something they shouldn't have done, and hopefully if you have consequences, it's related, and then from there, they're able to move on and make better decisions. It's supposed to be part of the learning process. So one of the things about middle school is we have teachable moments every day. Every day, kids are going to make mistakes. And one of the beauties about middle school is we have the opportunity to teach them. It's an opportunity in an age in which kids are trying to figure out their identity and trying to figure out who they are and where different boundaries are. And so I think the discipline comes in is teaching them, and hopefully they're learning, just as they're learning social studies or math. Some things might be as simple as kids are coming in late every day. That to me is pretty clear cut. I don't want students arriving late to come to school today, because as they're walking to a classroom, a lot of times teachers have begun the lesson, they're interrupting the learning. There are some times that parents are having difficulty getting kids to school. They need a little support. To me, that's kind of a cut and dry thing. There's something else with discipline where maybe two kids are, having difficulty with each other, and they might push each other in the hallway. Well, then I have to figure out, what is it? Is it a bullying incident in which a kid is picking on someone? Is it two friends who just don't know how to get along? Is it a misunderstanding? I have to tease out what is the issue and then go from there and assign consequences. So when kids come into my office, I always try to remain curious. Why'd you do that? Well, what happened? Tell me what is going on. And from that, then I will try to figure out what's appropriate. Is that addressing?
Like, what would be a consequence of a kid coming in chronically late?
For us at Dover Sherburne, it might be that they have to spend lunch in the office. It might be that they have after school detentions. But then it's also depending on, is there a reason? Is the kid anxious? Is the kid, I remember there was probably last year, we had a kid who was arriving late to school all the time, but guess what? The kid was school phobic. I would have rather had him in 15 minutes late every day than skipping school or not wanting to go to school. So you do have to have a little bit of leeway with that, but overall, the idea is, I think, is if you level with kids and they understand what they did wrong and why there's a rule and why there's a consequence, then they can learn.
So in that kind of situation, would you reach out to the parents and communicate with them, or rely on
Yes.
the child to relay the message?
No, I think you have to reach out to the parents. So the best thing is when the parents and the teachers and the educators work together. So, if I'm assigning them a detention and they have to go see the assistant principal, which for some is, produces a lot of anxiety. When a kid comes home and says, I was in the principal's office, or I was in the assistant principal's office, I would wonder as a parent, like, why am I not being told that? I need to be called. Like, that's my child, and if they're going to see the assistant principal or the principal and there's some sort of discipline, I should, as a parent, know why that is. And so I will call. Now, there are some times that I will have a kid in and say, did you see something in the hall? I didn't. All right, have a good day. Like, I'm not calling necessarily if they're not directly involved. I'm not calling every parent, but I'm calling parents because I want to work with them, and I feel like if I'm not, then let's say something serious happens and I have to call and say, well, I've given him 3 detentions over the last 3 months. And as a parent, I'd say, why wasn't I alerted? Yeah.
So, this position has been held for a couple of years
Yep.
through an interim who's done a wonderful job supporting the school. And when this role takes over, there's going to be an absence of a grade.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the challenges are that the school's going to face, and how do you see that where leadership plays a role in that?
Right. So it's an interesting, I think, situation that the next building leader's walking into, because first of all, you have to deal with staff who are maybe losing kind of friends. They might have been, good friends with the 6th grade teacher for the last 5 years, and they're seeing them leave. There's a lot more space that's available. So I see the moving of 6th grade as being positive because of space, but I also realize that for staff, it's going to be a lot different. And I think it gives you an opportunity to kind of maybe reimagine some of the things of what the Ottoson wants to be about. But as a new person moving into the district, I can't show up and tell people what they want their school to be. I might be able to give them ideas of where we want to move forward, but the teachers who have been here for years and years and years, they're really the heart and soul of the school. And they're going to want to figure out what Ottoson wants to become. And I think that with parent groups who are going to want to maybe see some change, some of them maybe not, you've got to have those conversations. I see whoever takes this job over, they're going to be in a listening tour for the first 3 or 4 months. They're just going to be trying to figure out. It was interesting when I was in here for my day from 9 to 4, is I tried to be aware of what things people were bringing up. So there was a program that one of the teachers asked me, well, what do you think about this program? Then I went and talked to the kids, and they're like, I'm not sure about this program. All of a sudden, I'm like, ooh, that's twice. And then I'm walking down the hall, and I'm like casually talking to a teacher, and they're like, we have this program. And I'm like, oh, okay, that might be something we want to talk about. And so I think you have to listen, and I think you have to then come up with some sort of plan and some sort of vision of where you want to be. But I think you have to get the parents involved and the teachers. I think you're unsuccessful as any type of leader when you come in and you say, this is what we're going to do, you're going to buy it, and we're going to go. Like, I think the most effective teachers that I have seen are teachers who are fully invested and have a say. And I think that's what I would be looking for, especially for the first couple months. Yeah.
I was wondering how you think the kids in your current school would describe you, and how you think the staff in your current school would describe your style.
I think the kids would say that I'm loud. I think they would think that I'm enthusiastic and energetic, and hopefully that I'm always around. I would also hope that on a little bit deeper level, they would describe me as someone who's fair and someone they could go talk to. So when I look at an assistant's role and even a principal's role, one of the things that I think is important is you're almost student services. So the most important thing a building leader does is make sure the school is safe for kids, physically, emotionally, socially safe. And that's really what you need to do primarily, is you need to have kids walk into that building and they feel comfortable and they feel safe. And I'm hoping that the students would describe me as someone that they could go to if they had issues or if they had problems and they felt that I was real approachable. That's what I would hope the students would say. And I hope the staff would feel the same way. So when you're a building administrator and you have formed trust, I think you have teachers who will walk through the door, sit down, and vent. They'll say, I'm having trouble with this, or I'm having trouble with that, or I need a little time off because I have something at home. And I would hope that the teachers would say that I listen, and that I respect them, and that I will, listen to them, and hopefully be there when they need me to be. That being said, you're not out for a popularity contest or to be everyone's friends, because there are other times that you have to have those difficult conversations with people when they're not doing what they should be, or when you think that they might not have handled the situation well, or you don't think they were maybe fair to someone. So you can't just be the nice guy, because you have a responsibility overall to do what's in the best interest of kids. And that's hopefully at the bottom line is what I always want to remember is I'm there for the best interest of kids. I remember years ago there was an interview question that in Norwood, and they said, well, there's really like 3 stakeholders. You have the teachers, you have the kids, and you have the parents. What is the most important? And I was like, the kids. I would like all of them to feel valued and important, but I'm going to do what's in the best interest of kids. That's what schools are for. Yes.
What's been your experience, or what are your thoughts on developing cultural competency in the staff and in the students so that the school is a welcoming and safe place for all of the learners?
Right. So I would say that I think as a school system, I think there's a lot of school systems that are struggling with this throughout the state. So I would say in Dover-Sherburne, I would say that we have a small community. So we have 525 students at our middle school. And I would say that this year there's been more incidents of, graffiti in the bathroom or racial slurs than has been there in my first 4 years. And I think what we've done to address that is we brought the whole school together and we had a conversation about this. And for a lot of these kids, we're trying to teach them about what is appropriate, teaching them about respect. We try to do things that hopefully is inviting of all. So once again, that everyone feels safe. And so, well, it might mean that, last year the principal and I rode in on the Metco bus because we wanted to feel like what that was like. We didn't know what that morning felt for some of our Boston students who are coming in. We have an affinity group that we've met with to be able to talk. The high school, I think, did an incredible job in which they had a panel discussion in front of the whole student body. This is the high school, not the middle school, in which we had different people who spoke from the heart about what their life was like recently. We were lucky enough to have someone of the Jewish faith. Had a transgender student. We had a Metco student. We had a couple teachers, and they all addressed it. I thought it was one of the more powerful assemblies that I've ever attended, where we had kids, peers, talking to their peers. And I think that is extremely powerful, because I think a lot of times as adults, we tell kids, you should behave this way. And I think some of the most powerful things are when kids address other kids and say, this is hurtful, or I need, you to stop doing whatever you're doing. But I think it's something with all across the Commonwealth. I think schools are struggling with this issue, and you have to keep working on it, and you have to keep being creative and figure out how you get a culture that everyone feels accepted. Yes?
With that example,
Yeah.
on the graffiti,
Yeah.
what sort of communication strategy did you implement to communicate that to parents, to the public, et cetera?
Yeah, we sent out letters to the parents, just addressing them. I think one of the things that happens is when school systems aren't transparent, that they get themselves in trouble. And so I think when there's an incident that happens, you have to name it. You have to say, this is happening, and we need to work, and we need to be better at things. And so I think we were pretty clear in, telling and explaining to people what was happening. I also think that, for one student, we had to discipline that student a little severely, because we thought that student needed to have that certain consequences. So I think as a school system, so I was a history teacher, and I'm always like, I've always enjoyed it. I'm always like, it's the cover up that kills you, and if we're trying to project this image that we're like this just wonderful place that nothing bad happens, then we're not really being honest. And I think you have to express that, and you have to talk to people, and you have to reach out. So we sent a couple letters. We grabbed the school together, and I think most of the feedback has been real positive, and we are also reaching out to groups as well to help us, because that's the other thing. Like, as a school system, you're supposed to be pretty knowledgeable in things, but we're not knowledgeable in everything. And so sometimes we have to reach out to people outside the community who can come in and teach us. And so we did that as well. Yes?
Yes, can you give us an example of a time when you made a mistake and what you learned from it?
Yes. So, unfortunately, I make mistakes weekly. And I think that's a process of learning. So it's everything from, getting a kid sent to my office and me giving the student a consequence, and then all of a sudden I'm not following up with that teacher, and then the teacher interacts with that student in a way that they shouldn't, and it's my fault because I didn't go to that teacher and tell that teacher what happens. It's my sometimes jumping to a conclusion when something happens with a kid, and then having to go apologize to that student because I made an assumption that I shouldn't have. So I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna make, unfortunately I'm gonna keep making mistakes. I wanna keep them small, and I wanna learn from them, and I wanna apologize when I do. But I think as an administrator, you have a lot of decisions you have to make. Daily you're making decisions, weekly, yearly, and you have to be honest and own the mistakes that you're gonna make. And I think in a real trusting culture, people will let you know when you make a mistake, but they'll do it very politely. And so I try to also have that same philosophy with my staff. Yes.
Yes, in your introduction, you mentioned that in your new position, you're looking forward to implement new things that you learn.
Yeah.
What were those things?
I think a lot of it has to do with, so I think if I had an entry plan to come in here, I'd want to be on almost a listening tour to find out what are the issues of the Ottoson. Because I think I can't come in and say, I'm the expert. How do I talk to people who have been here 5, 10, 15 years and tell them that I'm all knowing? But I do feel like there are certain things that as a building leader that you're able to provide information. So I look at some of the things that happen with trust and culture that I would want to provide to the teachers. We're finding out more and more about kids who are introverted, for example, and what kind of education they need. I think you have to talk about differentiating instruction and looking at kids individually and what they need. I think there are processes that maybe we are successful with in a system I've been in before, like Dover Sherburne, that might be RTI, or maybe we had a different discipline process. So I don't know exactly what I can't say I would bring in A, B, and C, but I do know that I have, we're implementing an RTI program, which is something called response to intervention. I don't know the state of it here, but it's to hopefully look at individual students and find out what they need and really look at them as an individual. I know that we have 504 protocols at our school. I don't know what they are here. I don't know if they can be improved upon. Maybe the Ottoson is doing a better job in the school that I'm at. But I have been at 4 different schools, and I think I've been able to pick up things that they've done well and carry them with me. Yes?
As part of the Maple Consortium, Arlington as a district has committed itself to personalized learning.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering your thoughts about personalized learning, how you would try to bring that more into the school here, especially with some teachers who are, it's been here a long time and
Right.
view it as a difficult thing to embrace.
So I don't know about the Maple. Is there any more?
Well, it's
Is
a
that
consortium of
okay,
schools
okay.
that are committed to figuring out, to exploring personalized learning and try to implementing more of it.
Right. So I think one of the things we're trying to do at Dover Sherburne is talking about differentiating the instructions. So finding out where kids are and meeting them where they are. So it's talking about learning styles, it's talking about project-based learning, it's talking about meeting the students where they are and hopefully giving them an experience in which they can excel. So I think for a lot of schools or traditional schools, it's been a one-size-fits-all, and we're realizing that we need to be able to catch those kids who aren't the traditional learners. There's a lot of learners who can sit, like here, if I was teaching this class, taking notes and moving on, but I think there's a lot of things that you need to do to look at the individual. So I had mentioned RTI, which is response to intervention, which is looking at individual students and finding out what they need. And I think the biggest issue at middle school is sometimes teachers feel like if they are having different standards for different kids, it's not fair. And I actually think you have to give students what they need. And so if a student needs, for example, more hands-on, that's something you should be able to provide.
So how do you address with the faculty that maybe is a little reluctant to embrace some of these new things?
So I think the biggest, probably successful way to do that is we'll occasionally have faculty members, they'll be at our faculty meetings and they'll show what they're doing. I think it's always more powerful for another staff member to talk to a staff member and show them what they're doing in the classroom and to get excited about that and to use that to be able to get change. I think it's more difficult for me to be able to say, you need to do this. I found it's more effective if I have some teachers that I feel are doing things that I really want to highlight, and then they're able to meet with the other teachers and be able to pass their knowledge. At the school that I'm at, people are excited about teaching and they want to share. I need to give them the venue that they can share, and I want to give them a venue that they're able to learn if they need something. So if you're working as a science teacher with someone else and that science teacher can show you, wow, I'm doing this wonderful thing that's great, then as an administrator, I want to make sure you have time to work together, and then if you need some learning, that I'm able to provide that. Excellent.